Welcome to the Momentum Matters podcast, where we have courageous conversations with women leaders. You'll hear about their accomplishments, their experiences, their challenges, and best advice. If you are inspired by women who have overcome the barriers and gone on to do extraordinary things, you are in the right place.
Hi, welcome to the Momentum Matters podcast. I am just so happy to have Kelli Thompson here with us today. Kelli is one of our most popular facilitators in our executive leadership program here at Momentum. She's on repeat dial for us every year. Her content is so refreshing, so inspiring, as she really gets to the core of some of the things that are really the topics and the issues that we find year over year over year tend to hold women back in their careers and in their leadership, in their families and in their communities. So Kelli, thank you so much for making the time, and I can't wait to get with you.
Yeah, thank you for all the nice things you said. It's been so fun working with y'all.
Oh, well, you're the best. So, I kind of wanted to start with your a little bit of your story, just so that those in our audience who are not familiar with you can understand how you came to do this leadership training, because you came from corporate.
I did. I'm a corporate veteran, and I always love to start the story at the beginning that when I was a little girl, I actually wanted to be a meteorologist. Like that's all I ever wanted to be was the weather girl on TV. I was just fascinated with the weather. I still am. And I went to college and I was in the meteorology program and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to work the 5 and 10 o'clock news every night. That's terrible. Like, I don't want to do that at night. I want to be home. And so I was like, well, I guess I don't know what I'll do. I'll just switch to like a business and a political science major. I was working at a bank and I'm like, I kind of like banks. Banks are cool. The whole money thing was fascinating. And I ended up staying and working at banks. I worked at in banking and investment organizations for 14 years. And I actually got into human resource roles. And so, what was really interesting about my corporate career, and even some of the things that I do now as an executive coach, is I always think, like, gosh, I went from like wanting to be in the career that is the easiest to talk about, which is the weather, to being in HR, like counseling women or even counseling myself all day long. And the hardest thing that there is to talk about, which is money. Like, is it just kind of, did a whole, kind of 180 there. But how I really got to where I was is if you would have asked me in all those corporate years, could I ever be an entrepreneur? I would say, oh no, I don't have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. But one of the things that I started to realize when I was in banking was I was like, oh gosh, you know what? When I look up at my senior leadership team, there's no women. Like women kind of, there's a lot of them in branch banking and they kind of rise up. But I'm like, gosh, once you hit the SVP level, like I can't see them, even though we've been voted a best place to work for women. And so I actually left bank and I went to go work for a small technology startup in healthcare. And while I was actually founded by a woman in healthcare, there's not a women in leadership. But that's where I really started to reckon with some of my own doubts, some of my own shortcomings, and how much it had just killed my confidence to be in a place where sometimes I was the only woman in the room. And, I loved talking with women about negotiating pay, asking for what they deserve, because they were topics I was working on too. I then went to go work for another like leadership development consultant, similar to myself. And I had actually gotten remarried in 2018, and I was doing a lot of travel, going around all over the North America, really doing leadership training, leadership consulting. And I just wanted to get off the road. And, my daughter was 13. She was starting to get in, those of us who've been around 13-year-olds, they start to remember stuff. They're getting involved in more stuff. And I wanted to be there. I wanted to be home since I'd, gotten married. And I went to my boss and I'm like, is there any way I can just focus on coaching? Because coaching you can do from anywhere. And she's like, that's not really a business I want to, have just a person in. She's like, but if you ever want to go off on your own, you can take this client that we share and, good luck, basically, She was very supportive, but, take it and go. And that's literally what I did in 2019. I kind of used the privilege of me selling my house, moving into my husband's house. And I'm like, okay, I have all this money in savings. And so if I was ever going to burn the boats and leave corporate and try going out on my own, doing the things that I love, which is coaching, consulting, leadership training, and development, I'll go do it. And at first I just did anybody who would pay me money, as most entrepreneurs do. But then 2020 hit. And that really impacted my income. And so I thought to myself, well, what would I do all day long if I'm not getting paid? Because I'm pretty much not getting paid here. And I thought, you know what? I loved all those conversations I had with women. when I was an HR leader, because they were so meaningful to me, helping them advocate for what they want, encouraging them to apply for jobs, even if they don't meet all the criteria, negotiating, their pay or conversations with their leader. And once I really started focusing in on women, like everything in my business just changed. And so now I'm going into my 7th year out on my own. And that is my mission, is to help women advance to the rooms where decisions are made. And that is my primary focus. I still work with teams of all genders, but my primary focus is elevating women and creating more gender balance in those senior most rooms. And so that's the very short story of how things evolved beyond corporate and where we're at today.
And it aligns exactly, not kind of, but exactly with Momentum's mission as well. So I think that's what makes us a fantastic match. Tell us about your book, Closing the Confidence Gap. I'm interested to hear what the process was like for writing it, publishing it. I know a lot of women in our audience think in the back of their minds about writing a book, leaving a legacy. But this book is really like a how-to. It's a playbook on gaining your confidence. So tell us about the process and about some of the key takeaways from the book.
Yeah, I think Kirkus Reviews called it a forceful and empowering manual for women who wanted to advance in the workplace or something like that. Anyways, so same thing. When I was a little girl, yes, I wanted to be a weather person, but I always wanted to write a book. Like I would sit at my parents' little like computer with the orange letters and like type out books, but I just never knew what I was going to write about. And I still remember like having a conversation with my leader. I think it was like 2008. And I was like, like I've always wanted to write a book, but what I know for sure is it will never be a leadership book. And of course the universe, laughs, and because, really what I was comparing myself to at the time was all the leadership books that were out in the zeitgeist then. And if you still go to your computer or your phone right now and Google leadership books, it's going to return you books written by men. And that's all that was out there, in the time. So I just couldn't see myself in that space. And so fast forward to 2021, I'd had write a book on my bucket list and my goal list every year. And somehow this book just magically never wrote itself, And I was like, I am so tired of seeing this on my list. And so I actually I don't think it was random, but it felt random, got connected with somebody who is a book coach. Her name's Brooke Adams Law. And I go into this book coaching cohort, and she just really kind of helps me extract some of my stories, put the structure of the book together. And really the book is twofold. Yes, the book is all about closing the confidence gap and giving you more tools to feel more clear and confident in your career. And also it talks about some of the systemic issues that are in corporate America today. And it really just says, you know what, we're not going to change these systemic issues overnight. I wish we could. But let's just be aware of them. And then here's some tools and strategies so that you can thrive inside of them. And that's how I got connected to Momentum, because one of my book coach colleagues was Andrea McCaskey, who, if the folks listening have met her, is beloved. And her and I were in this book coaching
Legendary.
cohort.
We say
Legendary. I love her. And she goes, hey, I'm part of this group called Momentum. We should talk about it. And then, so writing the book was such a great experience, just telling a lot of my own stories, teaching a lot of my own frameworks, but then also then making wonderful connections with people like Andrea. And that's how the Momentum thing came full circle too. So
beautiful. Love it. And what would you say are some of the big takeaways, the little pearls of wisdom that you can give us that will get people to want to open up the book?
yeah, I think, the number one thing that people continue to say about the book is it doesn't feel like a boring how-to manual. I talk a lot about my own stories and really vulnerable stories about how my job was eliminated and I had to figure that out, about calling off a wedding, about just things that I dealt with being a mom and my weight. That honestly, over and over again, that's what people say. They're like, I literally can see myself in your book. And so it doesn't feel like this kind of dry how to. But some of the things that I think folks have really taken away is, number one, that book teaches them to identify what they stand for as a leader and in their life too, because so many of the poor decisions that I made in my own life, and I describe in the book, is because I just didn't know what I stood for. I didn't know what my values were. And I think I just assumed that everybody else shared the same values. And so once I got clear on what my values were and what I stood for, it was a lot easier for me to say no to things, to set boundaries. I would say the other thing that folks really take away from the book is I talk a lot about trusting yourself. and giving folks tools to trust their bodies, like trust their intuition, trust their own inner decision-making capabilities. And then once they've made that decision, I give them a lot of tools and frameworks to speak up and speak up in a way that feels authentic to them. I really hammer home in that book that there is no like ideal definition of executive presence or how you should show up. And so that book is really about like, here's how to discover the authentic things about you. What are your values? What are your unique talents? What are these unique strengths that you bring, these unique qualities? And how do you use those to show up confidently in your own way? And it is not a book about molding you into me or some other ideal leader that you've been told. So those are, I think, a few of the big things that folks reflect on that they enjoy.
I love that. I love it. And it reminds me of one of the sessions that you did, I believe it was last year, um, with us. You were talking about taking that next step, having the confidence. If you could, money were no object, knowledge were no object. If you could do that next, BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal, and if you had the confidence to do it, what would you do? And so many women, mention things like, "I would ask for that next promotion. I would go for that next job." And um, you talked about taking the next step and that you don't have to plan all the way out,
Mhm.
but you plan only as far as you can see, and then you get there. Can you use that analogy? Can you
Yeah.
share that with, because it's
Yeah,
so
absolutely. So
rich.
the way that I run a lot of, well, the way even I set up the book and I run a lot of my courses is I always ask folks, and I've asked this question of thousands of people. I always ask, what would you do if you had a little more confidence? And I often hear answers like, I would go for the job on the posting board. I would turn my side hobby into a main hustle. I would run for office. I would ask for a raise. Funny things like I'd tell my partner about my private Amazon account. I mean, just, a whole spectrum of things. And so then I often ask them, well, why can't you do that? And then we always hear the common answers like, I don't have time. I don't have enough confidence. What if I fail? I'm not qualified yet. I need to learn more. I mean, just so many things. And so I open a lot of my courses with the story of my daughter, actually. I always joke and say that when my daughter was around age 4, she developed this condition I call the butt firsts. And the butt first sounded like anytime I would ask her to do something that made her uncomfortable, like cleaning her room, she'd be like, Mom, but first, I need a slice of cheese. Mom, but first I need to put on socks. Mom, but first I need to, brush my doll's hair. But first, but first, but first. I mean, all of these reasons, right? Why she couldn't get into action. And one thing I observed is we never actually grow out of the but first. They just get more sophisticated, right? What would you do if you had a little more confidence? Oh, I would ask my boss for a raise. Oh, but first, I need to prove myself one more way. I need to gather more data, but first, but first, but first. And so then where I leave folks at the very end, which is what you're saying, is I say that the but first are the two most expensive words in our vocabulary because they're costly in our peace, our potential, and our paychecks. And if we can switch those words, but first, to two more valuable words, while also, it reminds us that, what, actually, I can take my tiniest, bravest next step while also feeling nervous, while also feeling doubtful. I think people think that they have to wait until they feel a certain way to do a thing, but it's the actions of those things that come first. And it's the feelings that come second, because confidence is a side effect of taking action. So that, getting back to, I think all too often people start to worry about steps that are 10 steps ahead. Like, what if I start this business and then I'm so busy that I have no work-life balance? I'm like, you are literally solving problems that don't exist yet, right? Right
Right.
now, the only step that you have to take is like, what is one thing that I could put out on LinkedIn to sell today to let people know that they can buy something from me, right? Like, it's just, we don't have to, it's like driving in the fog. Like, you can't see all the way around the corner. The only thing that you need to do to navigate, well, to drive in the fog is to just navigate literally like the 3 feet in front of you that you can see. And that's really, it's how do I take this ittiest, bittiest, tiniest step while also feeling nervous, doubtful, overwhelmed, whatever, because I know that confidence will be on the other end of that.
I love that. Yeah. Um, we often cite at Momentum that women, we know that women hold the majority of college degrees and master's degrees. We know that the majority of the college educated entry-level workforce is women. And then we know that around 40 to 45% of women make it up to middle management, and then that is where they get stuck. And
Hmm.
you are in the business of advancing women into these leadership positions. Momentum is also in that same business of advancing women into leadership positions, because we know that once you get to that middle management, the next rung up at executive management is only around 15% female. So we go from 45% to 15%. And as you mentioned, there are so many barriers, systemic barriers. We're not going to change those overnight. You and I both know that. So teaching women some ways to navigate within that. Getting around to my question is, I saw on your website that you have a course that takes achievers, which I would say most of these women in middle management have gotten there because they're so good at their job and they are high achievers. And most of them stay there for some interesting reasons. And you have a course that takes achievers from being an achiever to a strategic leader. Very interested in hearing your thoughts on why those dilemmas exist, and then what you do to move people out of that position.
Yeah, I love how you also are thinking in the both hand here, because remember, the systemic issues are that through no fault of their own, corporate America was created by men for men in the majority of an era where it was men in the workplace, right? So they could create the hours they wanted. They created the systems they wanted, because remember, it was only 1974 when women could like borrow money in her own name. It was 1988 when women get a business loan in her own name. This is not that long ago. So you have to remember, the systems were created by men for men when women stayed home, okay? Those systems haven't changed. And so one of the systemic reasons that I see, actually two systemic reasons I see that hold women back are, number one, they're trying to rise up in an organization, work the hours and work the style that was created by men. And it doesn't occur to them to say, well, actually, you don't have to do that. So what I see a lot of them do is they opt out. They're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work that way. And I'm like, well, who told you you had to? So I think it's that cognitive dissonance there. The other thing that I see systemically is that really holds women from rising up, and I talk about this in my course, is unpaid work. And so even at the office, right, who do we tend to give a lot of what I call non-promotable tasks to? I didn't coin that term. Linda Babcock coined that term. Non-promotable tasks are those things that you do in your work that really aren't going to show up on your performance review. They're not going to give you a raise. They're things like taking the meeting notes, planning the office parties, running the errands, being the only person that knows how to change the printer cartridge. I mean, those sorts of things, right? We still give those tasks to women. So they're burning out at higher levels, because not only are they doing their real job, but they're over here planning the office baby shower and filling the printer cartridges and taking all the meeting notes and doing some of this like more feminine office housework, right? And so those are the systemic issues I tell them to pay attention to, that, you can choose to set some boundaries and lead differently. Let's start using AI. I'm like, nobody should ever take a meeting note ever again. AI is so much better than you. But the other things that I see is women climb the corporate ladder. They have always been rewarded because they were the best, the fastest, and the smartest. And so then when they get to that certain level, they are often told that they're indispensable, but they're not executive material because they're so in the weeds. They're still like trying to jump in. They get that helper's high. Let me take over. You're not quite, you're not quite doing that right. They are so in the weeds because they were so good for so long, and they don't want to let go. And that really keeps them from moving to the next level, where that next level requires you to trust people, to delegate, to, coach people through things versus jumping in, fixing, saving the day, using that helper's high. And that is a big jump that they really have to make. Do men struggle with it? Yes. Yes, they do. I just don't see them struggle with it at the level. Because they haven't been brought up systemically with you have to be the one to do all the things. They haven't really heard that message. It just seems like it's a little easier for them to kind of let go, and lead at a higher level, focus their time on more strategic pursuits, where women really kind of get stuck in the weeds of wanting to be a good mentor, a good supporter. Let me save you, let me jump in. And so those are a lot of the strategies that we go through in that class, is how to spend their time differently and how their mindset has to change around some of those things.
How do you think the element of control, like the need to control, or we hear all the time, yes, I could show someone else how to do it, but this time it's faster if I just do it myself.
So that's the cover that I usually hear. Oh, see, it's just faster if I do it myself. And so then I often ask someone, and if you're listening, let's just walk through this together. So you might be thinking, oh, yeah, you know what? You're totally right. I should be delegating that, but it's just faster to do it myself. Okay. Well, why is it so bad that it would be a little bit slower? And like, really, I want you to like stop and think, well, why would it be so bad if it just went a little bit slower this time? What are you afraid might happen? Some of the things that I often hear is like, well, I guess if it takes a little slower, then maybe it reflects on me. Or if it takes a little slower, it's just not as rewarding, right? To get that dopamine hit. I guess if it takes, a little bit more time, then, it's like let me just back up and say another big reason why I see women stuck in this is because of completion bias. Completion bias, when we check the box, I'll just do it, I'll just take it over, we get the same dopamine hit we get at the casino.
Yeah.
And so to have to stop, to slow down, why would it be so bad if it took a little bit longer? You start to uncover that actually some of the reasons is, well, because like something internally says that if I get things done quickly, then I'm rewarded. Okay, well, what if the opposite is true? What if if you help others get things done more quickly, then you'll be rewarded? How could that be just as true? How does that actually help your organization? And so a lot of that, when you really dig down into it, is a lot of mindset sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can totally see that. Kelli, I want to make sure that I get to this. One of the most exciting things that I think that you've done as of late is do a TED Talk. So congratulations. And like,
Thank you.
not only did you get the spot, not only did you do it, but it's an editor's pick, right?
Yeah, I know, which
So,
happens to
so,
less than
so brag
1%
on
of talks.
yourself for a second. Like,
I
tell
know.
us how you came to do it and how it just took off. Like,
Yeah. So, TED, I write about my TEDx talk on my blog, and I've been writing about it on LinkedIn, but it actually started in 2018. I went to go watch somebody I knew do a talk. And I would like, okay, so when you watch TED Talks, they're like so perfect, But what you don't see when you actually go to an event is people forget their lines. They walk off stage, they come back on stage. I mean, it was so traumatizing just being in the audience. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, I'd be so nervous because you don't see that online. They stitch it all together and it looks beautiful and perfect. So it's like, I'm never going to do a TED Talk, right? Like famous last words for any of us. I'm never going to do that, universe laughs. Well, it was right when I was writing my book in 2022, TEDx Omaha, where I live. A member reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you ever consider doing a talk?" I'm like, "I'd consider it." And at that time, Roe v. Wade had just been leaked that it was going to be overturned, and I was like, "I'm going to talk about women's rights because and how they need more rights in the workplace because infertility had impacted me and blah 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 blah." This whole thing, and I was like, "No, it's not my message to share. My book's coming out." And then something that was like a paragraph in my book, which is something I talk about, and I call it the pedestal problem. Pedestal syndrome in my book, I changed it to pedestal problem for my talk, is how when I was in corporate, I remember sitting one day in one of those all day meetings and I was getting so annoyed. And it was like after lunch. We get a bathroom break and I go to the bathroom and I'm like, oh, why am I so annoyed? And I'm like, oh, it's because I'm hearing from the same voices over and over again. And all these voices are male voices because I work in this male dominated field of financial services. And I'm like, ugh, are there more men than women in this room? And there wasn't. The senior leaders are men, but the room was about 50% split. And I was like, ugh, these women should speak up, you know? And it's almost as like the bathroom walls came in. I mean, they're like, well, you could be the one to speak up. And I'm like, I can't speak up but first, right? I would need more experience. I need to make sure I don't sound silly. I need to go do more research, but first, and what I didn't realize was that I was really just being intimidated by the hippo in the room, which is called the highest paid person's opinion. And I just thought that because they had more titles than me, or maybe more charisma or more years and experience, then they must know best. And therefore, my ideas and insights don't matter. And I just really allowed that almost intimidation and like idolization to just keep me silent. And I wrote about that for like I said, just a paragraph in my book. But it really started to become a thing as I just talked to more people and went out and did more coaching and did more training. And I'm like, maybe this is a real thing. And so then I went to I went to TED in 2023 in my local area. They had already closed for speakers. And so then I applied again in 2024 and they selected my topic. And that really is the premise of the talk is the pedestal problem through something we call authority bias, which is, we tend to put the opinions of experts or people older on us. So we try to tend to listen to them more, even Chat GPT. And so my whole talk is about how from a young age, I put high schoolers on a pedestal, about my sunscreen lotion choices. I won't ruin it for you. You have to go listen to my sunscreen lotion choices, but some of you may
Yeah, totally
giggle.
identified with, by the
Yep.
way.
Yep. And then how that really ended up in corporate America and how it silences voices, especially of women and underrepresented voices. But it hurts leaders too, because, when we put leaders on a pedestal, I say that they turn into brilliant jerks who never get good feedback. We're too scared to share ideas or feedback with them. And so, they don't hear things. Sometimes this can lead to corporate scandals. And so instead of giving advice in the talk, I think this is what makes it unique and maybe why the editors liked it is I don't give advice. I actually direct people back to themselves and encourage them to ask themselves a set of questions to find their own ways of knowing and trusting themselves, so that they stop underestimating themselves and putting others on a pedestal. So
Like a
yeah,
great coach would do.
yeah. And I think I took a coaching approach to it, which made it maybe a little different than some other talks. And so perhaps that's why they chose it to stand out. But it was really exciting to get that nomination.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I highly encourage people to go out and look at it. It's Kelly, Kelli Thompson, Thompson,
That's me.
TED Talk, right?
Yes. Yeah. Literally, if you Google Kelly Thompson TEDx talk or TED talk, it'll be the first thing that pops up. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
it's so great. I've watched it 3 times.
Oh, thank you.
So you are coming in November to do our executive class, so we're excited to have you back. Can you share, maybe it's also for those people who are not part of the executive class, share a little bit of give us a sneak peek of kind of what you're going to cover.
Yeah, so I cover a lot of the core concepts for my book. And so I call it leading with clarity and confidence. And we literally, if you want to boil it down, we talk about building clarity and building confidence. But what I often really talk about is, again, some of those most popular topics from the book, knowing what you stand for as a leader, because executives know that as they accelerate in the organization, they're going to get a lot of well-meaning advice. They're going to make decisions that have a lot more exposure. They touch a lot more people. They impact a lot more money. And so you need to learn to trust yourself and know what you stand for, because you're probably going to endure some criticism. And so if you don't know what you stand for, like, it'll be really hard for you to ignore the criticism that isn't meaningful to you. And it'll be hard for you to filter what advice, actually is going to move you closer to the leader you want to become. We talk about doubt and imposter feelings, and I don't give like platitudes about confidence. I give them tools to actually become more skillful of navigating doubt and anxiety and overwhelm. We talk about delegating and getting out of that helper's high and that hero role, and that, how they can advance from achiever to leader. And then I give them an advocacy model framework. Again, I don't give 5 easy tips to speak up. I say, here's a framework that's going to help you speak up, that's in alignment with your unique perspectives and talents, your values, and what is yours to say. And then really wrapping all of that into, okay, what are the next steps that are going to move them closer to the leader they want to become?
Love that.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear it again in November. I highly recommend that people go out and check out your book, Closing the Confidence Gap. And as we wrap up, Kelly, I would love just to hear, I know that you train so many thousands of women across the country. You are serving as an executive coach to hundreds of women, and you have kind of seen and heard it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, what what are your thoughts about momentum when you came and you discovered this program here in Alabama? What was your
Yeah. I
takeaway?
came for the legendary Andrea. And after that, I learned actually there is some things that are really unique about momentum that I think people should really pay attention to. So the interesting thing about momentum is I come for the executive class, but I can't think of any other leadership development organization like this that separates out the classes by the experience of where you're at in the organization. And that is really, really unique, because I know Nebraska, where I live, has something very similar, but there's kind of like the program. Like, this is the program you go through, right? Whereas, like, I think it's really cool that Momentum has like the executive class and you have your upward class. And I'm not going to be able to remember all the names, but it's really powerful, though, to be in these cohorts with people who are in the thick of it, of what you're in the thick of it with too. So I think that that's really unique. And you would think like, oh, well, of course that people would structure their programs that way, but they don't. So I think that's really unique. The other thing that's really unique about Momentum that I haven't seen a lot of is, and they also have the mentoring component. So obviously there's this whole mentoring program that, maybe you aren't, one of the standard programs. But having a mentor is just, a whole other way to, get some learning and development in your career. And then I think the really cool thing is that I think you all do better than some of the other programs is engaging your alumni.
Mhm.
And, bringing your alumni back in, I have the benefit of talking actually to several of your alumni. And some of them have said, you know what? I have this thing. Actually, I'm going to reach out to somebody that was in my class, this long ago. And I know that they also get reach outs from people in the current classes. And so like your network isn't just the cohort that you're in, but I think you all do a really nice job of like the alumni is like still part of the gang, right? You can still reach out, they still connect. And so I think those are the three
Priceless.
things. The tiered, the mentoring, and the alumni make it really unique.
Oh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, thank you so much, and I cannot wait to see you in November. And for those who are watching on YouTube, can you just introduce us to your furry friend back there?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's Rocky. And he's been so
Rocky.
good this entire podcast. He usually makes an appearance in all my calls. I actually have two dogs. So I have Harley who's back on the couch, but he's kind of a 12-year-old grumpy old man who he just wants
Okay.
to be on the couch and away from everything. And this guy, Rocky, he's always in the action. So
Well, I thought Rocky was a throw pillow till Rocky raised up his head. And
yeah, nope, he's a Cavasoo. He's a half Shih Tzu, half King Charles Cavalier. So he's something
wonderful.
else.
Great. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for
Thank
making
you.
time for us today. We can't wait to welcome you in November and look forward to seeing everything that you do coming forward.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been awesome to be part of Momentum.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Momentum Matters. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast as we share more important conversations with women leaders. We would love for you to rate our show and share with others in your life. This episode of Momentum Matters was produced by Social U and brought to you by America's Thrift Stores, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama, Protective Life, and Regions Bank. A full list of corporate partners can be found at momentumleaders.org. We also want to thank the individual donors, Momentum members, and volunteers for their commitment to our mission.